Hello everybody and welcome to Tiger Tells the Lost Stories, a place you'll find stories and fanfictions written and read to you by your host, me, Tiger. Today we're diving back into our Marvel and DC fanfiction universe, a place where, in story continuity, I combined the universe of Marvel and the universe of DC, combined into one big, ongoing, continuity-driven story universe with multiple stories in it, and you can go to Tiger Tales, the YouTube channel, and this YouTube channel to find more stories. But this story actually takes place before Union Day, the event where both universes combined. This is before Dead became a Doctor. I have a very specific, insane villain on War Against Gotham called Dr. Dead, and he has 3 voices, but one of them is the Joker, who, just before Union Day, put a chip inside of his head. So, this is before Union Day, before he met the Joker, and before Joker put a personality chip into his brain. And we meet Cornelius, who is the original personality. But it turns out that Cornelius actually has other voices in his head. And in the last chapter, we left Cornelius being shot by a bully that he ended up, harming deadly. Or shall I say, agony, one of his personalities did. And we left him bleeding, but also talking to a new voice in his head, Eric. So let's dive in and find out what happens. Before Dead became a Doctor, Chapter 3, Run Away. I sat on the floor of the garage. Agony was quiet for the moment, and my mind was filled with this new voice. I didn't know whether I was going insane, or maybe I was schizophrenic, or maybe I was just hearing things because of the pain. The voice called himself Eric, claimed he was in the army at some point, a field medic to be exact, and knew how to tend to my bullet wound. My arm was shaking, and I could feel my pulse literally in my wrist. It felt like it was going to explode.
Yes, you're in pain. Stop monologuing and sort your pathetic ass out so we can get going.
Agony barked at me. Oh, good to know you're still around. Who's the new guy? I asked in my mind.
Hello? Did you forget I exist?
Eric chimed in. Actually, no, I was just asking Agony who the hell you are. Sorry, just a little taken back, I muttered in my thoughts.
I can help if you let me.
Eric told me. Right, yeah, okay, sorry. Do what you have to do, I told him, and then Eric took over.
I picked up the medical kit with my good hand, and I popped it open, and sorted out the needle, and I started sewing up the wound. The pain was unbearable. My hand clenched, my teeth clenched, but I finally managed to get it done. Cleaned up the blood, discarded the evidence, and took some painkillers, and that was my job done. So I let Cornelius take over.
I snapped back to reality. I looked around and the blood was cleaned up, my wound had been sewn, and the pain had started wearing off. It was rather odd, but Eric had done it, and done it pretty darn well. I walked out of the garage and back into the house. I didn't know what to do. I was again in a massive mess, and again it was Agony's fault.
No, it wasn't.
Agony barked in my mind. Shut up, will you? I snapped back.
Ooh, someone is testy.
Agony chimed. It's your fault we're in this mess. Own it, I told him. Then I ran upstairs into my room and found a big backpack, and I started shoving all sorts of stuff inside.
Oh, at last. We are we now, and not a you. Nice to be appreciated.
Agony grunted. I thought I told you to shut up, I snapped at him. Then I carried on packing the bag. I put clothes and items that I would need. My head was swimming with thoughts. I zipped up the bag and ran downstairs, and there Uncle Ron stood, the man who adopted me. He looked rather pissed off and concerned, somehow, at exactly the same time. And where do you think you're going? Uncle Ron asked. It happened again, I muttered.
Why are we talking to him? Let's go.
Agony rushed me in my mind. So the kid has a gun wound. Guessing you didn't get a gun, so it must have been his. I told the police you were with me, Uncle Ron told me sternly. Then he walked into the house properly and headed into the kitchen. I put my bag down and I followed him. Thanks, I told him. Don't thank me. Explain, Uncle Ron barked.
I killed, sir. I killed a man in cold blood. Everything went black and white and done. I had a gun and I smoked him.
Agony mocked in my mind. Shut up, I snapped. Then I realised that I said the 2 words out loud. You do that a lot. You muttered to yourself. In the mirror, Mrs. Caprison saw you fully on talking to yourself, like you're talking to thin air. Who are you talking to? Come on, you've snapped so quickly and become violent somehow? Ron said with a stern face. It's hard to explain, I muttered.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Keep those lips of yours fucking sealed!
Agony growled in my mind. Uncle Ron took a deep breath and he got himself a glass of water. He took a mouthful, then sat down on one of the kitchen chairs. He looked at me directly in the eye. Well, I'm listening, Uncle Ron stated. I took a deep breath and I exhaled extremely slowly.
I will stab you in the face, in the heart, in the throat, in the dick, in the front. What thrills will make you shut up?
Agony grunted in my mind. Since the night Mum and Dad died, I've had this voice in my head. He talks to me, and sometimes I blank out, and he takes over. He calls himself Agony. I think earlier I had another voice in my head too, Eric or something, but he's new. I told him. Do you think I'm nuts? Or I'm dumb? Corny, this is serious. A boy's in the hospital. He lost a lot of blood. You already battered the daylights into his face, and you make up some insane crap like that somewhere. You can't just put the blame on things. You have to own it yourself, Uncle Ron yelled at me. I sighed and put my hands in my pocket, and my hand grazed the gun that was in my pocket the entire time. My eyes widened. Hello, are you listening? Uncle Ron asked. I'm sorry, I'm not lying. Agony is real. I just don't know if I'm nuts or if I've got dissociated identity disorder or whatever else there is, I told him. Oh, stop the act already, Uncle Ron barked at me. Suddenly, a car drove into our driveway. I saw blue flashing lights and I ran to the living room window and looked through to see several police officers climbing out the police car. Then I bolted back and looked at Uncle Ron.
What did you do?
Agony sneered in my head. What did you do? I snapped Uncle Ron. I'm sorry, Connie. You need help. You need to know pulling a gun on a kid, whether he bullies you or not, is not okay. Maybe the night your parents died broke you somehow or something, but I need to fix you. I need to get you help. I don't know how, but now you're making things up, making people out of thin air. You're ill, Corny. You're sick. And luckily, there are things and people that can do it and help you out, Uncle Ron explained. I trusted you, I muttered through my teeth.
We trusted you.
Agony screamed in my head. Then the front door opened and a police officer walked in. I stepped out of the kitchen and looked down the hallway to see the police officer stood there waiting. I pulled out the gun and aimed it at the officer and I pulled the trigger. The police officer got hit twice in the chest and then he dropped to the floor. The other police officer ran to the car to get on the radio. Then Uncle Ron came running out. He stood behind me in shock. I turned around and aimed the gun at him. Whoa, easy, Corny. Put it down, Ron said, holding his hands up in surrender. I trusted you, I barked. Then I turned around and took a deep sigh. Do not find me, or I'll let you meet Agony, I told him. I then ran down the hallway, grabbed my bag, and I left by the stairs, and then I ran out of that building. Jumped over the injured police officer, running past the police car with the other officer in, and I also scooted past Ron's car. I then legged it as fast as I could down the street. My rage increased my blood flow, and it gave me a driving force just to keep on running.
Well done, kid. I'm so proud. Couldn't have done it better myself.
Agony said in my head. I shook my head, discarding him, ignoring the maniac's voice, and I kept on running. Ron's voice calling out for me, echoing behind me, but I ignored it. My 2 years of safety had ended as I ran away. And there we have it, guys, another entry to Before Dead Became a Doctor. This is a really fun story for me because I get to introduce different characters and stuff. Our Agony is voiced by Mark, who also voices Agony in War Against Gotham on Tiger Tales. Our new voice, Eric, our field medic, was voiced by Willie, aka Cosplay Dude 637. They're both my voice actors, but we're also the Three Ranger Bros. So I'm going to use this time real quick to give us a bit of an introduction. The Three Ranger Bros are a collective project where we host our own Power Ranger storylines. Mark on Nursery Comics podcast, found wherever you can find podcasts. Cosplay Dude 637 and his podcast, Power Rangers Universe 19, where he hosts all of his Power Rangers and Kamen Rider storylines. And then, of course, I host mine across the Tiger Tales channels. That being said, though, there are other storylines written on Nerds Through Comics, and Cosplay Dude 637 has more than just Power Rangers Universe 19. Things like Sailor Moon E, The Order, Storytime with Cosplay Dude 637, and then he has 2 YouTube channels, One Piece Audio Drama and Nostalgia Time. All of them literally have so many different storylines on there, and all of them, created by him, so you might want to go check them out. Of course, check out the other Tiger Tales channels. We have Tiger Tales, Tiger Tales Game Over, and Tiger Tales Mysterious Origins. The last one, I actually host my original stories, and you'll also learn more about Mr. Pocket, a frequent character popping up in my Marvel and DC storylines. There, though, you'll also find so many more stories across all other Tiger Tales, different fan fictions, delving into different fandoms, but then there's also Tiger Tales X, a new YouTube channel which delves into our crossovers. Actual fictional crossovers where I'm getting 2 forms of fiction and cross them over. For example, I've done Ben 10 Alien Force and Doctor Who. So you might want to go check it out. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and of course, make sure you subscribe to this channel, and I shall see you guys real soon.
That before we can...
Don't touch my Pringles.